Here today, gone tomorrow. The high-tech doghouse once outside of this Brooklyn business and others across the borough are removed amid a threat from the city's Department of Transportation. The full story is coming up.
Angi Gonzalez joins us live from Park Slope to explain why. Angie.
Yes, Cheryl. Well, the founder of the company says that they are conceding, at least temporarily at this point, removing one of those dog parkers from outside of this Brooklyn business. But they say that they are going to try doggone hard to stay in business here in New York City. Dog Parker, the Brooklyn startup behind these high-tech dog houses, says the city's Department of Transportation is closing the door on their dream.
I had the idea 3 years ago. The first call I made was to the city to try to figure this out.
What the company calls self-service, quote, animal harbors are temperature-controlled and were placed on public property outside partner businesses to give customers a place to leave their four-legged friend while they're out and about.
I think it's a nice thing to have in case, especially like today, if you have a smaller dog, they get cold really easily, so somewhere they can stay while you go inside, and then you don't have to leave them at home all the time.
After receiving grants from the New York City Economic Development Corporation and the Brooklyn Library, the company expanded to more than 36 locations in Brooklyn with plans to expand further and operated without issue for more than 2 years. So its founder was surprised to receive a letter from the city's Department of Transportation 3 months ago, stating the units should be removed or risk having them impounded.
It's disappointing getting close to 50 houses in Brooklyn, having dozens of more stores waiting for this, thousands of dog owners using it. It's frustrating after all this time.
An NYC DOT spokesman said the issue is the units, quote, create obstructions on sidewalks that are clearly public property. Tom, the owner of 18-year-old Pebbles, says he's never used the dog parker, but doesn't see the harm in having them there.
I don't understand the regulations of why they want to remove them.
And while the company has now removed and loaded up all of its dog parkers except 2 at the Brooklyn Library, they say this is hopefully not the end, just a pause in their New York City operations. City Council member Rafael Espinal Jr. says he'll do what he can to keep the company's doggy doors open.
This is a city that prides itself in promoting innovation, so I think it'll be a big step backwards if it doesn't step up and actually do something to help remediate this situation.
And Cheryl, in the meantime, the company's founder says that they are going to focus on other opportunities that have come from starting here in New York City. That means expanding to other U.S. cities that have expressed interest. In Park Slope, Brooklyn, Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Hey, Angie, thank you for that.
For many, Super Bowl Sunday is synonymous, not just with food, but with the New York Roadrunners' 4-mile gridiron around Central Park. The annual race drew about 5,000 participants this year, some looking to kick off one of the biggest days in sports with a little healthy competition.
Why did you sign up for this race?
To beat my friend. And I did that, so I got something done.
But some along the sidelines came with a different goal, hoping to rally their running buddies to a strong finish.
I have a lot of friends who are running in the community, so it's really great to just give them some cheering.
But organizers say many in attendance came to burn off a few calories before indulging later on. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says Super Bowl Sunday is the second biggest eating day behind Thanksgiving. The Calorie Control Council estimates the typical fan will consume 2,400 calories and more than 100 grams of fat during the game alone.
Everybody comes out, they're getting ready to run, get themselves all set to eat guacamole and drink a lot of beer later on.
During the middle of the race, participants were asked to make their predictions for the big game by running under banners either for the Eagles or the Patriots. Participants overwhelmingly picked the Eagles to win. Competitors were also encouraged to support their favorite football team by sporting their team colors, jerseys, or other fan gear. A handful interpreted that in their own way and paid homage to the soccer team they like most.
I'll be honest, it's only one football for me. I'm from Barcelona, so it's the only time of year that I could kind of, celebrate it.
Along with bragging rights, cash prizes were handed out to the top 3 men and women overall. The first place winners running away with $500 and an extra $100 each for completing the race before the expected finish time. In Central Park, Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Now, the DOB has since issued one violation for failure to secure the building. They also now required the building's owner to hire what are called fire guards that will help lead people out of the building in case of a fire because they cannot now use that fire escape. In Soho, Angie Gonzalez, New York 1. Lewis, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Angie.
The nuts and bolts of this framework.
That's right, Cheryl. We should point out that this is still a pretty fluid situation, so some of the exact terms of the deal haven't been ironed out just yet, but we do know the major bullet points so that we can share them with you tonight. So here is the plan that it would include a path to citizenship for 1.8 million undocumented immigrants. Now, that number is comprised of around 700,000 so-called dreamers. These are undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children who signed up for protections under the Obama-era immigration program called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as DACA. But the plan would also offer a path of citizenship for another million or so undocumented immigrants, people that would have met the requirements for DACA but did not apply. Now, in order to get there, this would have to happen. The administration would get $25 billion for the wall, money that would go towards border infrastructure and technology and additional funds for personnel. There would also have to be changes to policy on chain migration, and immigrants already here legally would only be allowed to bring spouses or minor children with them. And the diversity visa lottery would be abolished. This is a program that benefits up to 50,000 people per year from countries that have lower levels of immigration to the U.S. And Trump has said he wants the process to be merit-based. Now, the administration is calling this plan a, quote, dramatic concession and a, quote, compromise. But this list of demands outlined are sticking points that the president has been talking about for some time now, Cheryl. The president does, however, believe that this would get the 60 votes needed in the Senate to pass, but might take some tweaking over on the House side in order to go through.
Now, Angie, there is reaction from both sides tonight.
Exactly. Well, especially on the opposing side, one of the groups that we've been speaking with for some time on this immigration issue and the future for Dreamers is Make the Road New York. The organization is often involved in some of these recent DACA protests that we've seen here in the city, among some other causes. But they sent us this statement, which says, in part, Trump's so-called plan is a complete sham. Instead of engaging constructively in the debate, he has time and again sought only to further derail immigration negotiations. And this tonight from Senator Elizabeth Warren. Her tweet says, by ending DACA, Donald Trump subjected 800,000 Dreamers to deportation. Now he wants them to hold them hostage to Stephen Miller's anti-immigrant wish list. It's insulting. We already have a bipartisan solution to the Trump-created crisis. It's called the DREAM Act. But, Cheryl, as you know, the DREAM Act, as it stands now, has been introduced a number of times over the years, and it hasn't passed. But I have a feeling that Senator Elizabeth Warren is not going to be among the 60 votes that the president thinks will be there in the Senate in order to pass this plan he has.
Angie Gonzalez.
I was shocked to hear that statement from the borough president himself. And those are just some nice words he has to the New York City Housing Authority, saying that they need to do more to fix the heating issues in its developments. Now, Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. sent this letter to NYCHA's CEO asking that the agency issue an emergency declaration. Now, Diaz's letter comes in response to several mobile boilers across the city malfunctioning during that recent cold snap. As you may remember, Diaz says that NYCHA is currently experiencing a crisis and that it must act immediately for the sake of its residents.
Well, we all know that NYCHA is a mess these days. You have a demoralized workforce. You have a deteriorating infrastructure. This way, regardless of financing, we can make sure that once you get to financing, that you can get those boilers installed as quickly as possible.
Now, NYCHA issued this response saying the underlying issue is its $17 billion in capital need, adding, while we have staff working 24/7 to provide repairs as quickly as possible, that federal de-investment has resulted in aged and unreliable infrastructure and that this cannot be remedied overnight. But in response to that,
The borough president told us that while he understands the federal government isn't living up to their obligations, that doesn't mean that they should not be pursuing innovative solutions. Meantime, to Queens now, where community leaders are asking the city to give them a place they say they can still call their own as their neighborhood expands. The Hunter Point Civic Association is calling on the New York City Economic Development Corporation for a community indoor recreation space as developers continue to build up residential units in Long Island City. They say with nearly 7,100 apartments in the pipeline for Hunters Point that there needs to be a place where people can go out and get moving.
We actually don't have any community center space, so it would be a place for all the communities to get together, for the children to socialize, for them to get the physical activity they need.
And the response from the NYCHA, well, they declined our request for comment. Members of the association, however, say that they would like to partner with a local nonprofit in order to run the center. And the sky is the limit. That's the message from the city's retiring schools chancellor that she had for students during a visit in Manhattan today. Schools Chancellor Carmen Farina joined students from the Bronx and Queens on Thursday for a visit to the New York City Center for Aerospace and Applied Mathematics. Now, the DOE-run facility is known to most as the Space Center. It's housed in a school building that's on the Lower East Side and hosts students from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade, each day giving them an experience with realistic space and flight simulations.
To me, what you learn in a textbook is fine, but when you can do something in an experiential way, it really takes it to a whole other level.
Now, between the 2016 to 2017 school year, the Space Center hosted 360 class trips. 9,600 students from all 5 boroughs attended. Cheryl, just a great opportunity for kids in this city. I tell my family all the time who lives back in Washington, D.C., that kids here have a real opportunity. They're close to the United Nations. They have things like this where they can learn what is really available to them.
The world at their fingertips.
Right.
It makes me wish this happened when I was a kid growing up in the city. I had no such opportunity.
No. They have a whole lot.
Oh, yeah. They're lucky and very blessed. Thank you for that, Angie. Are forming a coalition to sue the federal government over what they call an unjust law. Angie Gonzalez joins us now to explain what exactly this is about. They're suing the federal government.
They're suing the federal government, Cheryl, and believe it or not, this has actually been done before in the past during the Obama administration. There's actually a how-to on how to do it, and this is the paper that you need in order to file suit against the federal government. You can find it at usa.gov, but those 3 governors haven't exactly gotten things rolling just yet. Instead, Governor Cuomo announced today that New York State is just joining New Jersey and Connecticut in forming this coalition, as you mentioned, Cheryl, that's going to challenge this new tax code, calling it unconstitutional. Now, it was passed by Congress and signed into law by the president last month. And frankly, this is actually what we expected from Governor Cuomo, at least during his State of the State address, which took place earlier this month. He literally said, and you can see the bullet points there, that there was a federal assault on New York, and he laid out a 3-point strategy for addressing this, specifically saying that he believed the legislation was illegal and that he planned on challenging it in court.
So what is the next step?
Right. So what they're arguing, though, people are advocates and people who are also against this at all are just basically saying they have a couple of arguments to make. Now, one of them is that state and federal property taxes, as well as income taxes under this new tax code, are capped to $10,000 a year. And this impacts high income earners. Right. We know that in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, there are a lot of high earners here. So what the governors are saying is basically that they are being unfairly targeted by the president signing this, but Congress did sign it and the president signed it. So they're just saying that they're going to fight this in whatever way they can. And the governor actually spoke about it by phone earlier today.
And if we do nothing, we get devastated, right? So Washington launches the missile. It's headed this way. You have 2 options. Stand where you are and be devastated, or run for your life.
Sounds pretty bleak, right? Well, things are still in very broad terms right now. However, we're going to have to see how this all pans out. But we do know that the lawsuit itself is supposed to be coming in the next few weeks or so.
Okay, Angie, we'll be looking forward to a follow-up report on that. This is all about kindness. Let's go around the boroughs with Angi Gonzalez. We like kindness.
We like kindness,
We
and
like
this is
nice
actually a
people.
worldwide initiative, so it's nice to see that some Staten Island students are doing that. But first, we're going to kick things off in Queens, where some small business owners and community advocates are saying that the MTA is hogging their streets. City Council member Jimmy Van Bramer and community advocates called on the MTA on Friday to stop taking their parking spaces along Roosevelt Avenue. They say it's been happening between 57th and 61st Streets in Woodside. Now, they say that people can't park, even spend their dollars locally because of the gates, cranes, and cherry pickers in the way. Frustrated locals say that they understand the 7 train needs repairs, which is why all that machinery is there in the first place, but the MTA does need to respect those who live in the area and the business owners who are trying to make a living.
So the MTA needs to get here and actually change the way they do business in Woodside so that Woodsiders can continue to live their lives and not be punished.
Now, in response, an MTA spokesperson says that they've been in contact with those who are concerned, adding, quote, "This equipment is essential for critical state of good repair work on the 7 line, and we simply must do maintenance to ensure safe, reliable service for Queens." Meantime, students at an elementary school on Staten Island are now part of a grassroots movement to show everyone that kindness matters. PS22 in Graniteville just finished taking part in the Kindness Challenge this week. This is a challenge I actually like. The effort was started by the global nonprofit Kids for Peace as a way to show children that they can help create a more positive, unified, and respectful school environment for themselves. Schools sign up for the week-long initiative where students are given a number of tasks to complete, things like smile at 25 people or thank someone who helped you. And an interactive art installation finds a new home in Brooklyn. The interactive Dumbo reflector is now in a new location near the Empire Stores on Water Street in Dumbo. The installation, which was created to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Dumbo Improvement District, has graced other spots since its creation in 2016. The sign enables anyone with a Twitter account to ask questions using the hashtag #DumboMagic. The sign then responds using a color-coded system.
It is just a visible symbol of the creativity, the tech savviness of the neighborhood. And, you know, it's like the welcome sign of the 21st century.
The sign's going to be at the Empire Stores location through the spring. And Cheryl, for those who really just don't understand how this thing works, basically, it's like a magic 8-ball.
Okay.
So you ask it a question, you put the hashtag when you tweet something out, and in real time, it responds to you with a color on those letters. And basically, the color is coded to an answer. So say you get green, that means yes. So if you ask it, am I going to get married in 2018? It gives you green. You have your answer.
Ain't nothing but a crystal ball. make it plain. Okay? Angi, you may recall that a student was stabbed to death in class there last year, and now that school may soon close. Our Angi Gonzalez joins us live from East Tremont in the Bronx with more. Angi.
That's right, Cheryl. The sign outside of the school actually says "Anchored for Greatness," but parents who attended that meeting tonight say that if the DOE moves forward with a proposal to close the school, that would be setting students up for failure. Attendance for the second of 2 public hearings on a DOE proposal to close the Urban Assembly School for Wildlife Conservation was again low. But among the 24 parents who did come Monday night, several made one last plea with officials to keep the Bronx school open.
Right now, I prefer here because I know what's here, and to go to another school, overcrowd.
It was a similar story for several others who spoke before a group who will in turn deliver parents' comments to a panel for education policy, also known as PEP. The panel's approval is needed to make the closure a reality. Some, however, worry that a decision's already been made.
There are about 13 people on the PEP, and 8 of them are appointed by the mayor, and 5 of them are appointed by each borough president. Who do you think the appointees are gonna, what decision are they gonna make?
Those who did take to the mic to have their voices heard also seemed convinced the proposed closure was a response to the fatal stabbing of a 15-year-old student and the wounding of a 16-year-old in September, allegedly at the hands of an 18-year-old classmate, and not because of dwindling enrollment, as officials indicated.
That's not true. That's only like about 15%. But they did not say that all the kids that were graduating 8th grade in this school were planning to come to Wildlife for high school.
The school serves more than 1,000 students from 6th to 12th grades and is among about a dozen others at risk of being closed. Senior Deputy Chancellor Dr. Dorita Gibson told parents no decision had been made and that the closure would only be a last resort. And Cheryl, the panel for education policy is going to make a final decision on this matter with their vote on February the 28th at 6 p.m. Officials say that should that pass, that students here at the school will be presented with other options by early March. In the East Fremont section of the Bronx, Angie Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for that live report.
And Rochelle, while we did reach out to the developer in this case, we have yet to hear back. But back in November, when the jury rendered its verdict, he said that he was going to fight this until the very end. In Long Island City, Angie Gonzalez, New York 1. Rochelle, back to you. And Cheryl, it's looking more like at this point that if they plan on staying at this hotel here in Queens past tomorrow, that they're going to be doing so on their own dollar. And they say they don't necessarily want to stay here in New York. They simply just have no home to go home to. Miguel Rosado came to New York from Puerto Rico with his son and daughter in December after seeing his home and neighborhood decimated by not one, but two hurricanes. First Irma, then Maria.
My child have medical condition, my son too, and the hospital is closed, don't have light.
According to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, there are a little more than 3,900 Hurricane Maria applicants staying in hotels or motels across 41 states as part of their Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program. About 240 have been put up in New York, including the Rosados, who were placed in an extended stay America Hotel in Queens. But the longer they stay, program enrollees get closer to losing their FEMA assistance. Rosado's family has been at their hotel about 3 months, and after getting 2 extensions, their latest application for housing aid is set to expire Wednesday. Miguel Rosado says it's not fair considering victims of past hurricanes were allowed to live in FEMA trailers for years during hurricane recovery efforts.
In Puerto Rico, only 3 months. Wow, why? I am American too.
FEMA calls the TSA program a short-term sheltering option, describing it as a bridge to other long-term housing solutions. The agency has already extended the length of the program once, following a plea from Puerto Rico's governor. On Monday, U.S. Representatives Nydia Velázquez and Jose Serrano penned a letter to FEMA's administrator asking it be extended again, this time to mid-June, citing the recent explosion of a power substation that caused massive power blackouts. Rosado's 10-year-old daughter says she can't imagine ever going back.
Because in Puerto Rico it's so hard and everything is so destroyed.
And Cheryl, this family's last-ditch effort to stay at this hotel past tomorrow was denied just a few hours ago. Tonight, a FEMA representative said that their latest extension request would take about 50 days to review. They were offered rental assistance in order to stay in an apartment here in the city, but that review process would take at least 45 days. In College Point, Queens, Angie Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for
I'm Angie Gonzalez with the New York 1 Minute. Police are investigating after a baby was found dead inside of a garbage can in Queens. They say that a woman found the baby while walking through Dutch Kills Park in Astoria. One man who was struck by a piece of falling debris in Soho yesterday has now died. Police say that the 58-year-old man was hit in the head by a piece of the fire escape, which fell from the 7th floor of a commercial building. Family and fellow servicemen say goodbye to a Bronx soldier who died while rescuing people from a burning building. 28-year-old Emmanuel Mensah rushed into his Belmont apartment building several times, saving 4 people before he collapsed from smoke inhalation. This comes just one day after his family accepted 2 high military awards in his honor. And snow is already beginning to fall in parts of the city. We are forecasting 1 to 3 inches overnight. A Bronx soldier who died saving several people from a burning building is laid to rest. Fellow soldiers and loved ones honored Private First Class Emmanuel Mensah at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Belmont on Saturday morning. Back on December the 28th, Mensah ran back into his apartment building 4 times, rescuing 4 people before collapsing inside from smoke inhalation.
Well, it makes me feel proud that so many people have been able to brave the cold and come out to show their last respect to my brother. I feel very proud of his accomplishments as a soldier, and I believe that the family will be able to get over this tragic incident, and we come together and stay united and move forward.
On Friday, Mensah's family accepted 2 military awards in his honor. His family says that the New York State Medal of Valor and the Soldier's Medal, which is the Army's highest award for valor outside of combat, will be buried with him. Mensah was one of the 13 people who died in that fire. Meanwhile, Vice President Mike Pence promises to make school safety a top priority in the wake of the shooting. Pence was in Dallas on Saturday speaking to the group America First Policies, which promotes the agenda of the Trump administration. Without mentioning gun control, the vice president spoke about how the White House plans to prevent future tragedies.
We will get to the bottom of what happened here. And as we speak, the Justice Department is already working with agencies across our government to study the intersection of mental health and criminality. And when President Trump meets with our nation's governors in just a few short weeks, he will make the safety of our nation's schools our top administration priority.
Pence also said the administration wants to train law enforcement on how to handle individuals with dangerous mental illnesses. 2 people are in critical condition after flames break out inside of a building in Lower Manhattan. The 2-alarm fire broke out Saturday morning in a residential complex on Mulberry Street in Little Italy. The 1st and 2nd floors caught fire and residents had to be evacuated. A total of 13 people were injured in the blaze. 5 of them were taken to downtown Presbyterian Hospital to be treated for their injuries. A gun control rally is held in Fort Lauderdale following the deadly school shooting inside of a South Florida high school earlier this week. Students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland stood alongside advocates and lawmakers demanding swift action on gun control.
How about we stop blaming the victims for something that was the shooter's fault? The fault of the people who let him buy the guns in the first place, those at the gun shows.
17 people were killed Wednesday when 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz opened fire inside of his former high school. He confessed to the shootings 1 day later and faces 17 counts of premeditated murder. He's expected to appear in court again on Monday. One Brooklyn pup had quite the adventure after being rescued from a subway tunnel on Friday night. Now, the poodle you see here, named Dakota, was playing in a dog park when she suddenly escaped from her owner and ended up in the J Street station. Now, that's when she jumped onto the tracks. The NYPD searched for the poodle as the MTA stopped service, causing delays on some trains. Now, the MTA worker who rescued Dakota describes the ordeal.
They held back the F train at Carroll Street. I climbed down to the roadbed and I started looking for the dog. The dog was actually underneath the platform curled up. So I patted her because I didn't want her to bite me or anything, and she was shaking, and I took her from underneath the platform and I put her on the platform and we waited for our owner to show up.
Fortunately, Dakota did not suffer any major injuries besides being a little shaken up, of course. And the MTA says that subway service resumed by around 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. A self-proclaimed psychic in Manhattan is busted for allegedly peddling false fortunes. Police have arrested 26-year-old Sharon Adams, who ran a psychic business out of her East 45th Street apartment. Adams used the handle Psychic Faith, and police say that she conned a Queens woman into giving her more than $85,000. Police say that Adams told the woman that bad spirits were targeting her and her daughter, and that the only way to stop the spirits was to pay her. The woman shelled out the money, but police say that she never received any services in return. Adams is scheduled to appear in court next month. The sister of Deborah Danner speaks exclusively to New York One about her sister's mental health and how she managed her mental illness over several decades. Now, this photo of Deborah Danner with former Mayor Michael Bloomberg was taken at Gracie Mansion in 2005 at an event for people with disabilities. Danner suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. Her sister Jennifer Danner says that justice was denied after Sergeant Hugh Berry was found not guilty of killing the 66-year-old back in October of 2016. On Thursday, at the end of a judge-only trial, the judge said that Bronx prosecutors didn't prove that the cop was not justified in shooting Danner twice. Sergeant Berry said that Danner swung a bat at him inside of her bedroom as he tried to restrain her. In an exclusive interview with New York One, Jennifer Danner called Sergeant Berry a murderer and explained how over the years she tried to get her sister the right care.
Very smart woman. Every move I made with dead guardianship, she had a counter move.
If she took her medicine, would she be okay?
She was committed to a hospital, I think it was up in Rockland County or Westchester County. She was there for 6 months. It was different of night and day. It was like having the old Debbie back. But with schizophrenics, they take their medicine, they feel better, they don't attribute it to the medicine. They say, oh, I'm fine, I don't need to take this anymore. And then they start to spiral again, which Debbie did, because this disease just aided her. I watched her, the sister I grew up with for 60 years, just fade away from me.
Jennifer is suing the city and the NYPD for Deborah's death. You can see more of our interview on our website, NewYork1.com.
I'm Vivian Lee.
And I'm Angie Gonzalez with the New York 1 Minute. Police are investigating after a baby was found dead in a garbage can in a Queens Park. They say that a woman found the baby while walking through Dutch Kills Park in Astoria.
One man who was injured by a piece of falling debris in Soho yesterday has died. Police say the 58-year-old man was hit by a piece of the building's fire escape stairwell that fell from the 7th floor.
Family and friends say goodbye to a Bronx soldier who sacrificed his life to save his neighbors during a fire. 28-year-old Emmanuel Mensah died in December after rushing into a burning building. And this comes just one day after his family accepted 2 high military awards in his honor.
We're forecasting 1 to 3 inches of snow in the city. Already we're seeing delays at area airports, so call ahead to update your flight.
And the annual Toy Fair is taking over the Javits Center with the hottest items in the industry. Changes are coming to the Vatican in an effort to combat sexual assault. Pope Francis announced on Saturday that he's revising his Sex Abuse Advisory Commission by adding 9 new members. The commission was formed in 2013 to fight clerical abuse within the Catholic Church. The announcement comes after heavy criticism from other religious leaders over the ways in which Pope Francis has handled sexual abuse cases in the past. Last month, the Pope defended a Chilean bishop accused of covering up instances of sex abuse. One man who was injured by a piece of falling debris in Soho has died. Police say that 58-year-old Richard Marchart was rushed to the hospital Friday after he was hit by a piece of the building's fire escape. One other person is still in critical condition. The 9-story building at 38 Howard Street is currently under construction. The fire department says that a building inspector was doing a routine inspection of the facade when a piece of the fire escape came loose and fell to the sidewalk.
Fire escape looks to be in good condition, but that's going to be investigated by the building department.
The Department of Buildings has issued 1 violation for failing to safeguard the building and is now requiring the owner to hire what are called fire guards in order to help people exit the building safely in the event of a fire. The 115th North American International Toy Fair is back in town. The trade show features more than 1,100 companies this year. Thousands of toys are being exhibited, some that haven't even hit the store shelves yet.
Kids love surprises, so they are getting to see toys that they don't know what it is. It's like a little mystery until they actually open it. And toy companies are incorporating that into all their lines.
The toy fair runs until Tuesday, but it's closed to the public and only open to industry professionals.